press record. Just speak again. I'll just check those levels. Just give a...
Hello, I'm Vanessa,
and
we're in Richmond. I'm here with Julian. I'm doing a little bit of a funny thing with my voice. Yeah, I'm excited.
Alrighty, today I'm in London with Vanessa. Oh no, Mazzocchi!
Yay!
It's very easy.
Yeah.
Nice. And Vanessa is from Melbourne, Australia, where I was born, and she is going to talk to us today about spiritual healing.
Yeah.
You think so?
Absolutely. It would be my pleasure.
Right. So we're going to explore the topic of how to work with people's energy fields. And I think we'll just start from the start. When did you first have an understanding of the human energy field, do you think?
I certainly came into initiation by fire, I would say, when I became a paramedic. And I was being exposed to 5 or 6 patients a day, and mainly mental health, drug and alcohol. And I was feeling very overwhelmed, but I often couldn't put into words why I was feeling overwhelmed. And it was kind of this energetic overload that I was getting as they were, what I felt were kind of purging in the ambulance or through this episode. And it would take me 2 or 3 days to start to kind of shake the energy that I felt that I had been kind of overcome with or dealt with.
And it's not there's a high churn in paramedics. You don't last long. It's not, you're not like 60-year-old paramedics. They're pretty much, you got 5 to 10 years and that's it. You're cooked, basically.
Yeah. I mean, when I started, it was a 2-year turnover for paramedics.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's pretty insightful considering it's 3 years to study to be a paramedic.
Oh, wow.
And then 2 years to be a graduate. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet anyone who done it for 10, 20 years?
You did, yeah. And they either absolutely loved the job and that was what they were meant to do, or that they were just riding out waiting for their retirement and really stuck.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And unfortunately, it was the latter most of the time. Yeah.
And so this is how you became aware of how your energy field was being affected by other people's energy fields. So how did that manifest for you? How did you feel that?
I went through a pretty long and deep period of depression, and I felt like I couldn't relate with a lot of my colleagues. Like it felt like there was something that I was experiencing that maybe they couldn't quite interpret at that time, or they just shut off from, which I understood because that's what I ended up doing for a while.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of got to turn off the empathy, otherwise you're just going to get destroyed, you know. And I think maybe some of the paramedics who like stick it in, they just kind of like close off that empathy circuit, you know. There's such a thing as mirror neurons actually in the brain. Lots of studies show it's actually like empathy is sort of wired in some respect. But yeah, I'd imagine some of the people who kind of get directed into going, they're just like, maybe they're wired a little bit differently to a lot of people that they can actually do it. Because I think average person was just like, I could not do that, you know.
Yeah, I think it was, for me, it was wanting to work outside and be dynamic and wanting to help people. And it wasn't until I was at that really low point that I sat down and I meditated and I said, you know, what am I meant to do with my life? Where do I go from here? And I got the really clear answer that I was meant to be a healer. And I'm grateful for the paramedic path because it was one of my patients who had an MDMA overdose, and I was the paramedic on scene where was the lead clinician, and unfortunately he passed away, and he was super young. He was like 20, and I ended up being at this low point in my life. I saw this like ad in a piece of paper, and it was like the London College of Psychic Studies, and the healing clinic.
You got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah. And it was like £5 a session. So I kind of showed up, and it was like, oh, help. And the guy there was like, I think you should see this woman. And she was a psychic, and she ended up telling me that I was carrying him and 3 other patients that had passed on spirits.
Okay.
And essentially, once I was able to rid those energies from me, I was like a whole new person, and it was kind of like how I found shamanism, and essentially like a whole rebirth, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what happened there? What the puzzle pieces led you to?
Yeah. Well, it was
continue?
Funny. She said to me, she's like, have you ever heard of shamanism? And I was like, nope.
So at this point, what was your relationship to religion, spirituality, the alternative world, whatever you want to call, or were you just like full scale, blinkers on, or whatever you want to call it?
I was super interested in psychedelics. I hadn't done any big transformative journeys, but I knew that I really wanted to. I just thought my mental health was too unstable at that point. And I also didn't have the connections.
Yeah.
And I loved meditating, and I was very open to things, but I didn't have much of a grasp on practices. But was very curious. And then I had a chance encounter. I went to India. I had a chance encounter. I asked a guy for a lift to the supermarket. He lived around the corner from me in London, and it was also from Melbourne. And on the back of the scooter in India, he was like, what do you want to do with your life? And I was like, I want to combine science and spirituality. And he's like, here's my card. When you get back to London, let's do some coaching. And then he ended up connecting with me with a woman that was running some work, some teachings around the path of the medicine woman. And I had no idea what that meant.
Okay.
And I had no idea what her offering was, but I was drawn to it. And that led me down the plant medicine path. And it all kind of unfurled from there. I was sat in my first plant medicine ceremony, and behind me a tree, it's the roots ripped out of the ground. It fell, it hit power lines, it caught on fire and snapped. And I kind of realized, like, okay, there's something, here that I need to keep exploring. Yeah. And so
you were working with ayahuasca and that sort of thing for some time?
It wasn't. It was just the first ceremony that really kickstarted it all, and probably U-turned my life. And then I just let go of that and just said, like, okay, when the plants come into my life, I'll say yes. But I didn't seek it out because it was such a big change for me. Like, before then, I didn't draw or paint or sing, or I had no affinity to kind of my creative side. And after that, it was like, it really opened me up.
Right. Yeah. And so how long ago was this that you had your first plant medicine journey?
10 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so how did everything progress from there? How did you begin to do spiritual healing work with people? How did that unfold?
Yeah. So initially through my own meditation practice, I think that gave me a good sense of being able to have the sensory awareness and track just through my own practice. But then a few years later, I started to become more interested in working seasonally with like the pagan calendar and working with like the light and the darkness. And I was led to work with a teacher who teaches shamanic energy medicine and Seiðr, which is Nordic shamanism. And essentially that was another huge U-turn in my life. Like, I related it to being a toddler and almost learning how to walk again. Like, during that period, it just felt like everything was so overwhelming. Like, people would often, like, when I'd write down the date, I would put like 2023 and we were in 2024 or 2025. Like, the most basic tasks was super confusing.
Oh, you were quite spacey.
Yeah.
I know what that's about, the spaciness. What that is, because you experience that with the psychedelics as well when you have these spacey periods. And that's when you're actually expanding your parameters in your awareness.
Yeah.
And there's more space there and you don't know how to orientate in the new parameters. And so you're kind of fumbling around trying to actually navigate it when it's new territory. You know, that's how I see it. When you get the spaciness, it's, some people think it's a bad thing, but it means you're actually growing. But actually, that's a sign your parameters are expanding beyond what they were. Yeah. So what was making you spacey? How would you define what your growth was? How can you explain what it's like to come from a place where, okay, because I don't know, I think things are changing slightly in culture over time, but generally we're living in the materialistic age. People don't have a conception of the human energy field. It's just, it's pretty, we live in the age of scientism and show me the evidence and all that sort of thing. And related to how you came to touch the human energy field and understand it, what were the kind of like moments in that process where the light sort of turned on for you, do you think?
Yeah, I think through the shamanic journeying, we would work with deities who had really specific stories that we would connect with.
Wait on, deities. So this, like, you were just like, deities? Oh yeah, deities, I'm down with that. Like, let's talk to some deities, right? What was that like for you? Was that like, yeah, I can do this, deities?
Like, it took me a while to be like, it took me a really long time to be like, is this real? Like, is what we're doing valid?
Yeah.
But I think it was beautiful the way that you hold both.
Yeah.
You hold like, this is totally batshit crazy and none of it makes any sense. And is this actually happening?
Yeah.
And like, this is absolutely working.
But what was it that changed inner dialogue to like, yeah, deities, yeah, they're my buds, right? What changed? After a while, how long did it take before you're like, yeah, my deities, my homies, yeah, deities, rock on?
I mean, I'd say like around a year of shamanic journeying, and that's almost 4 or 5 times a week, a couple hours at a time. It wasn't a quick switch.
So are these deities, like they related to Nordic shamanism, or they're like global deities?
Both.
Right.
Yeah. So we worked with both.
And so related to what you were taught, like a lot of these deities are similar to, what is it, Neil Gaiman?
Oh, I haven't heard of him.
You haven't heard of this guy?
No.
I think it's his work where he talks about the gods, like no one believes in the gods anymore. And so the gods kind of die because they don't have the attention, and it's interesting. I was just in Egypt and there's some like gods and goddesses there, which the local Egyptians don't really connect with. But people from outside, they go there and you can connect with these deities in Egypt, Oh, it's Egypt's really tough going if anyone's been there. Like, it's like India, sort of hard going, But generally, so when you were first interacting with the deities, like what did you find out about them? What's their motivation? Why are they here? Why are they working with humans?
Yeah. So you notice a theme with them, which is like often they are deeply loving and incredibly sharp and straightforward. So I think that has been kind of one of the shocks, is that they kind of give you a slap, like, stop doing that. You know, like when a child touches a hot stove,
Right.
you don't like kind of sit them down and talk to, like, you rip their hand away.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need that. You know, if you're going in the wrong direction, go the other way.
Yeah.
Differently.
Let's backtrack a little bit, because I'm dealing with this with my torping students or people who want to do it. They have an inkling that they want to do it, but they're like, I can't see. I can't see deities. The other world is not present to me. And years ago, I was curious about a particular modality where they do spiritual healing, and I was reaching out. This is from like 20 years ago. I was reaching out to the guy who was working in a couple and is part of this modality, and he just made a blog post saying that legions of demons had been torturing him, and all these techniques hadn't worked. But finally he met Jesus, and Jesus just swept them all out of the way. And so he's become a born-again Christian. But I digress. Basically, when I was investigating it, I was interested in doing the training, but I was skeptical that in the workshop that I would be able to see. When you were doing this training, was like seeing the deity something that came easily to you or other people? How would you explain that process?
Yeah, you have to trust the senses that you have. So for me, I'm very kinesthetic, but I am also very visual, and the visuals come quite fast for me.
Were there some people who the visuals just didn't come to, they just didn't get it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, like my sense of smell is also strong. But for other people, they could hear, they'd get words or music.
Right.
Yeah. And then
so what percentage of people were very visual and could do it, and what percentage would you say who were doing this training just weren't able to really get it?
Maybe 30 or 40% initially, but your skills would definitely develop,
because it's like a muscle that you're developing.
Absolutely.
It's not like, and some people have the muscle kind of in them, and I actually I'm not naturally, I can't visualize my actual felt sense of my like psychic sight is not very good. Like I'm in the probably lower 20% of people naturally, I'd say, but I think that I had to really work to get it. I had to really, you know, like a puny, you know, 20-pound guy, you know, on that level. I had to really work those muscles to develop that. But someone like you are flexing and you just went straight in.
Well, that was the problem too. So it was also about honing my vision so that I moved slower.
Right.
Because however you are in your shamanic journeys is how you are in real life.
Yeah.
But almost accelerated because you're in this complete mystery, creative land that is so abundant.
Yeah.
So for me, it was about really slowing down as to not miss anything.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So this is interesting what you're talking about, the spirit world, and this is the thing that I think a lot of people are seeking, the spirit world, right? A lot of people are seeking the spirit world because they don't have access to it, and a lot of people say using the medicines like ayahuasca to access the spirit world. But you were like, I don't need psychedelics. I can do it naturally, right? So what was the thing that helped you to be able to access the spirit world? Or you just kind of jumped right in like a duck, would you say?
I think learning and being validated to trust the impulses that you were receiving, and getting a lot of feedback that, like, yes, go after that, follow that, keep going. Right. And I learned then to trust my body as a vehicle. And it's so different in the way that you feel so different after you've released so much, or you've been able to touch the light. Yeah. So then you know that it's working, so that you gain this momentum. But also the body works in such a different way to the mind. I found that it was, the feedback was so different and so quick that I knew I was onto something and that it was working. So in a shamanic journey, if my fingers would start to tingle or I'd start to need to cough or something, you'd follow it and then all of a sudden you were moving in a different way, or you were crying or you were shaking, and it just organically led to the next thing, the next thing.
Well, that's the interesting thing. That's when you have these emotional reactions, like you're crying or shaking. The body can't say, no, it ain't real, right? So I think there's an element in the human framework that the spirit world is kind of treated a bit like a fantasy. Like if you think of like mainstream consciousness in the Western world, a lot of people, they would like to have an idea that there was something more, but a lot of times, like it's just like, no, that's a fantasy. Like it's not real, you know. And did you see that among other people who were having issues and difficulty coming to terms with these realities? Would you say
it was something we didn't speak about, but I think everybody went through it, but that's also where the folklore helps, because you're given a map. So as you relate to the deities who are coming to life through their own stories, you then are able to make sense of what's happening to you, because it doesn't make sense. You know, we would come out really exhausted and then, you know, your life would change in a really quick way because you're able to shed really heavy layers that we've all been carrying for so long. We all have. So you were kind of given more and more proof, but just not in a way that the head could ever make sense of.
Yeah, right. And so when you're working with the deities, how are you working with them? How are you calling them up? Are you giving them offerings? And like, what are they? Who pays them, right? Are you guys like giving them incense and food, or what's going on there?
Yeah. So when we work with them in Seiðr, we often ask them questions. So there can be one Volva, the wise woman, who's embodying one of the deities, and then we get the other people to come up to us and ask questions. And there are certain things that we do that we don't have to do, but are offerings of respect. So we can come up to them and be on our knees, and we can say thank you afterwards. And essentially, I think what feeds them is being able to implement that into your fields and into your life and into the people you touch.
Yeah, so they're in a place in their evolution where they're like, all right, go and help the humans, and then whatever work they do, they get paid spiritually, would you say? Is that how you describe it?
Absolutely. And being able to even call on them gives them a sense of belonging and worth and love.
Yeah. Well, I had an experience yesterday where I was having breakthroughs in my spiritual surgery, and I don't know if you can resonate with this, but I was getting really high. It's like higher beings were looking at me and like, good little monkey, here's some good little doggy, here's some dog biscuits with MDMA and crack and canna. It's like really, I'm like yum yum yum. I feel really high now. You know, have you ever had a experience like that?
What's coming to me is like Hecate's was one goddess that I worked with for a really long time, and she was helping me. She's the goddess of crossroads. She helps you make better decisions. You know, people think crossroads can be like turning right or turning left, but it's like, am I going to choose to think differently? Yeah. So I was working with her, and then she'd keep putting people on my path that she wanted to connect with. Right. And I'd be like, oh, hey, have you heard of Hecate's? Yeah. And I could feel like every time I kind of tuned in and they got what they needed, they got this connection with her. I was getting high and high. Yeah, it was beautiful, this acceleration of her spreading her light into the world.
And so did you ever in this paradigm talk to the animal spirits as well? Is that part of it?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's it's rich and limitless, and the things that you can do, I think, in the spirit world helps you being able to receive all the goodness in this world and realize that for me, I'm just entitled to live this outrageous and beautiful life that, yet again, the mind can't comprehend. So how I'm able to receive help, allyship, gifts, and even act in the spirit world has helped me be able to just open up my life to so much more goodness. And
so when you were, how long was it that you were in this kind of initiation learning phase before you really found your feet in doing all this sort of work? Do you think you might have had some kind of past life or prior knowledge of this space and this work?
Yeah, I think so. And I think specific guides lead you down certain paths. And I definitely had some healing guides that were pushing me down the shamanic healing route.
Yeah.
And so what was the other question?
Yeah. Do you think you have like a past life or some sort of history or innate understanding of these realms?
Oh, and what also you said about how long did it take to find
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, in one hand, it's like, I don't know if you ever find your feet, because it is like we talked about at the beginning with the parameters moving.
Yeah.
It's now I welcome that. At the time, I was like, this is fucked. But at the time, but now I'm like, if I can feel that happening, I go into that, and I wipe my schedule, and I take time to go a bit deeper into where I'm being led.
Yeah.
But saying that, I think after 2 years, I did feel like, you are given some framework, and then you can take that and integrate it into your life and find different ways that your guides want to work specifically through you and your gifts.
And so related to Seiðr, you've got the working with the deities, and then you've got presumably another aspect of it, which is like a spiritual healing aspect coming through the hands or the how would you explain that to people who have no understanding of what that is or how it works?
Yeah, so it's looking for the red thread essentially, and you are finding the blockage and essentially unraveling it through the energy field of the body and letting it take you deeper and deeper. And essentially that depends how willing the person is. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's very... I was talking to you about this, about, okay, the origins of this work, and it was a Swedish woman who was teaching this, but I was like, this doesn't come from Sweden, it comes from Finland. And I maybe it came from the Sami people to some degree, but I was... I have a friend who she does this indigenous Finnish spiritual healing work, and it's very similar. Like, and a lot of it is, interestingly enough, continually asking for consent to push forward in working with people's energy field. So it's like, it totally makes sense that, okay, it's what the person is ready for and wants to do on that layer and that level, but there's a strong understanding that there is a telepathic psychic link between all human beings that I would say is completely alien to almost all people in the Western world, right? But I would say that is indigenous European knowledge, right? And we don't know. For example, we're in the UK now. We don't know the indigenous knowledge of the people who built Stonehenge, right? But presumably, because they were wild humans, they would have had some sort of native shamanic tradition, as all the indigenous Europeans would have. But it seems to me like the Finnish, they were one of the, in that area, the Estonians as well, they were one of the last groups of people to succumb to the Christian invaders. But then they held that knowledge within themselves. They said, look, we're going to pay lip service to your crazy belief systems. Otherwise, they just killed them, if they didn't convert. But we'll continue to do this in secret and hiding, So even, I remember even like 20 years ago in Finland, you couldn't even barely buy plants or herbs in the shops because that was like forbidden knowledge. Like it's changed now. But 20 years ago, you could feel it's like, oh no, that's the witcher stuff. We can't do that, But it's like, but that, I think that's my impression of where this has come from. It's come from Finland. It wouldn't have come from Norway. I mean, maybe the Vikings had something, but I think I get the impression it comes from Finland. What's your idea? Where does the word Seiðr come from?
Yeah, so they actually can't trace it back, its original roots. They say it's Nordic. It's very loose.
Right. And Finland isn't even really Nordic. And it would make sense that in Finland, because it's sort of forbidden knowledge, that it would take seed in Sweden, where there's more openness, and the Swedes are actually the dominator culture in Finland. So, in Finland, the Swedes, like over 10% of the population, speak Swedish, but like a 17th century Swedish. So it's like if to the Swedes, it sounds like they're speaking 17th century English. They're just like, for real, like, talk normally. But it totally makes sense that, because that knowledge, there's no where you can study this. I've just talked to people and met a lot of people in Finland and the underground and the spiritual scenes there and what have you. And I sort of understood this over the years because I've been to Finland a lot. It would make sense that because the Finns are so insecure. I love them, but they're they're not really allowed to be confident, right? They're not really allowed. You got to have this very democratic, everyone's got to be on the same level. There's no, no one can be bigger than anyone else. It's like a tribal kind of mindset. Like it's a little bit like their own version of the tall poppy syndrome or Yanti's law or whatever. They got their own version of that. But I can see the Swedes going, hey, this works. This is cool. Let's actually do this. Whereas the Finns are just like, they do it, but they do it in secret. And and my friend who learned it, she was told you can never charge money for this. And I said to her, well, how are you going to actually do it with people if you don't charge money, And I think I have these discussions with people, quite a lot because a lot of my clients are actually spiritual healers, and that because sometimes they, what my impression is that sometimes they will trigger, their work. It's like Jesus, they get kind of crucified by the entities because they're doing really powerful work and then no one can help them. And so they try me out and suddenly it's working, right? So I'm kind of seeing, okay, perhaps on a spiritual level, I can see in Finland, it's really sort of underground and it wouldn't be, I don't think in Finland you could set yourself up. Maybe there is people and I don't know them. I don't, everyone in Finland, even that many people. But I don't think in Finland you could set yourself up as a spiritual healer in that paradigm and somehow be accepted. I don't think that somehow, I don't know why, but it just, whereas I can see the Swedes are like the more mercantile, the more ambitious. They would go, oh yeah, what's this? Oh, this works. Oh, let's do this, Yeah. So that's how I'm saying it. So so do we know the origin of the word Seiðr?
Not that I know of.
Yeah. But you told me you met a woman who also practices it.
Yes, I do. I met her in Sweden, and she's been practicing it for many, many years. And she called herself Bad Auntie, which I loved.
Okay.
She's a breaker. So it seems to be quite accessible there, and you talk to people, you mention it, and they know what they're like. Oh, that's really weird.
Okay. Right. So it's a thing in Sweden.
Yes.
And how many people would you say are practicing it?
Oh, I don't know. It was only through casual conversation that maybe 1 in 5, 1 in 10 people knew what I was referring to.
Right, right. So there are many people in Sweden teaching it or like advertising it, saying this is what I do?
No, I think there's 2 or 3 teachers.
Oh, okay. Well, that's quite a lot.
Yeah.
And then how many people are practicing? And if you look it up on Google, how many people in Sweden are practicing it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, because there are individual practitioners, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're teachers as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And so how long were you, are you comfortable talking about your teacher and everything that happened? Not everything, but in the terms of like how that worked, how it all worked and what was going on there.
Yeah.
And as you told me, your teacher only taught women.
Yes, that's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So why is that?
I think that she felt there was a lot of wounding that had to be first accessed within the feminine psyche or energy field, and she felt particularly drawn to liberating women, and she felt that was her calling.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So how did you feel like there was sort of a burgeoning sisterhood in this sort of movement or setup when you were connecting with other practitioners in this framework?
Absolutely. So, yeah, the women that I practice with, I'm still friends with now, and you are bonded so deeply because we are often looking at wounds of like sexual abuse, of heartbreak, of abandonment, of deep grief, of anything that you can think of being suppressed, and in the shamanic realm, because you are accessing all of these memories and able to be transported to any environment, it's like you're reliving almost that trauma to help bring yourself up to light.
Right.
So you do build really deep bonds, and there's nowhere to hide in front of each other.
And so when you're working with people and you're doing Seiðr with people, do you find sometimes that it can be quite intense with working with these blockages and blocked energies and trauma, like sexual abuse and all this sort of thing?
Yeah, it's very graphic. And when you're working with each other, you're able to share kind of the full experience. But if you're working with a client, you often have to hold back because they're not ready and it will freak them out. But on the flip side of that is we get to experience ecstasy and pure bliss and joy and like, you know, just go through that bonding together too.
Yeah.
So you do get really close.
Yeah. And this is the other thing that, like, I think a lot of people are curious about. I did a podcast with Luis Fernandez, who's a spiritual healer, and he when COVID came, he was like, shit, how am I going to do the work I do? And that's when he started doing it remotely with people, the work that specific work that he does and the helpers that he works with. And so I think this is something that a lot of people are just have difficulty understanding how this even works, how this is even possible. How would you explain to people how the remote healing works, how it's possible to do that?
I wish I knew. Like, it is insane. And as you and me have talked about, actually sometimes remotely, it's better.
Yeah, it's easier.
Yeah, because you don't have someone in front of you on a couch with like the wind and someone walking past on the street or
just their presence and their energy field, like in their body and stuff, it's a lot
Absolutely.
easier actually to zero in, because otherwise you have to kind of maybe give them a tissue or something,
yeah.
and they're looking at their phone, and you're like,
Yeah,
whatever.
or that you're asking them to cough and they're like, oh, I feel awkward. Whereas like if they're in their own house,
That's right.
they can go for it.
That's it, yeah,
and you're not
yeah.
there in front of them. So I don't even use the camera. We
No.
never use the camera on.
Yeah,
And I think once someone allows you into their nervous system or their field,
yeah.
and that's sometimes the biggest block.
Do you think people find it quite challenging having that link up when that you are working in their field? They find it very challenging that you're able to see all this stuff about them and their thoughts and feelings and emotional body and all this sort of stuff. Because I mean, I think it could be very confronting to the ego and the mask self, as like, is all, in our society, it's all glossy and Instagrammable or whatever. And then it's like, okay, you have to kind of open up to somebody on an energetic level, might be quite challenging.
Yeah, and I think it's also the entities too. They want to get in the way.
Right.
So,
right.
Yes, it's absolutely them, and then it can be like the calls are getting shut down and the mic's dropping out, and you don't even want to start.
Yeah. So you talk about entities, like, so what's in Seiðr? Where does how do they understand entities in Seiðr? How would you describe whether how they understand the entities and how they deal with entities in that framework?
It's not so much a Seiðr perspective, because Seiðr is really simple in the terms that...
It's Seiðr, not Seiðr.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. I'm like Sade or something.
You're kind of given these very, very simple tools, but there's so much overlap in essentially shamanic journeying. So how they would often come to us is through, for me, visuals or through the kinesthetic, but it's like it might be snakes wrapping themselves around you. It could be like a feeling of black clouds suffocating you. It could be chains. It's metaphors and analogies in that world. So it's about releasing them. And often what I'm continuing to work with is rather than feeling like you're doing it yourself, it's handing it over to the deities and letting them work through it.
Yeah. So a lot of the time the deities are doing the clearing of entities and stuff like that.
Yes, absolutely.
And this is something that I began to learn about 4 years ago. Because there were some things that I wasn't able to deal with. And even now, sometimes deities just come in. Like I had Krishna come in randomly, and just help. And they've got all the tools. They're like superheroes. That's actually what they are. And they're just zooming around, like saving people all the time and doing all this cool shit all the time. And and they've got the ability to just go and karate chop them and they're gone, right?
Yeah, and it comes back down to being so simple. I think determination, intentionality, and humbleness, which you spoke of before. That will get you through. That's what you need.
Yeah.
That's all you need. And the humbleness is really important because you are accessing through this cleansing process.
Right.
You're accessing deep states of power and strength and manifestation.
Yeah.
So you have to, be humble, because you can obviously use that to be a dick.
Yeah.
Or you can get a really inflated ego.
Yeah.
Or you can wish for things that, are not super helpful.
Yeah, that's the superhero paradigm. Great power comes great responsibility. And you're not given, if you're given power and you deal with it well, then they're like, all right, they'll give you more. But if you fuck it up and be a dick, that's all you're going to get. You're just going to be a dick with a little bit of power. That's it, right?
Yeah, you're going to get stuck.
Yeah.
I think you spoke to it before. To be able to go deeper within yourself and with your client, you just need to be humble.
Yeah. So you found some deities, they're just a bit overwhelmed and they're not able to deal with some entities or situations. Have you ever seen that?
I think in those situations, I've just called on extra help.
Oh,
if I'm
okay,
feeling
yeah.
like, this
Okay.
is, yeah, pull up, back up, bring in the troops. Yeah.
But this is very interesting because I think it's like there's a bit of interest in this topic, and there's the work that. Have you heard of Robert Falconer and the internal family systems?
Yes.
And so what they're doing is they're using the model that comes from Spiritism and taking the entities to the light, you know?
Yeah.
And I had a friend, she said, no, they don't deserve to go into light. That's wrong.
No, yeah, it's interesting. I disagree, not disagree, but I'm curious about this because sometimes it's like you need to like exercise them and like get the heck out. And then other times you just look at them and you're like, no. Like, I'm not doing this. This is my space. Or this is their space. So just leave.
Well, this, I think because I think the West has this block too. That's why I was talking about this. Like you've internalized. It's like, yeah, deities, woohoo. And everyone else is like, what do you mean deities? There's no deities. It's just Jesus and he is not real, right? So I think, there's probably a long way that people in the West can go before forming these connections with these beings becomes part of, the culture at large, because what you're doing is like at the fringe of the fringe of the fringe. And I think possibly these techniques about how to work with entities and healing are one of the more efficient ways of doing it. And I met this guy. He's actually he's deceased now, but he was in Adelaide, and he would call on Vishnu, and Vishnu would just karate chop the entities to smithereens. So it can be that simple. It's not like that hard, And, torping for me is like one technique. This is another one that is very efficient and it works. And I think there's a block in the Western psyche, possibly because the Western Europeans have probably they were ripped away from their indigenous traditions at the threat of being burned alive and tortured. Like I was talking about Finland being the last holdout of that. And so they have part of the epigenetics is like, there be dragons, don't go there. That's haram. You're not supposed to talk to the gods. Now we're just talking to, it's all about Jesus now, and Jesus is a superhero god too, that he's real. He's all a part of it. But it's like, it's very common for people who don't even know about these Indian gods, for example, to drink ayahuasca, and suddenly they're encountering these blue gods and goddesses, and they'll, and they'll describe them, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's Vishnu, and so they don't even know. But what I think happened is that the people in India, they were drinking soma, and they began to see these gods, and people think, oh, that's just the gods that are existing, that they're just the Indian gods. No, they're like universal. They are like, Ganesh and is particularly like universal God, So this is something that because I think this is like what I'm speaking to, because this is what we're dealing with. This is the resistance that we're dealing with in the Western psyche, is also being teased. It's like even believing in entities in the first place, or other dimensions or the spirit world. It's like, oh, you're obviously dumb. You haven't read Derrida, So it's this kind of like. Yeah, it's just like, well, you're pre-rational and stupid because you believe that. We've transcended that and we know so much more, right? So I think there's that going on too. There's this kind of like, there's this sort of propaganda brainwashing against people forming these relationships with the gods and goddesses. So what would you say to the average person on the street? How would you recommend that they form a connection with these deities?
Yeah, and I'm going to jump back a little bit before answering that question. It's like, not only are they there, but they're desperate to connect with each of us, so that through the deities that's connecting with us, they are wanting to bring our gifts and our pain wounds to the surface, because they have something to teach us. So it's not only that they're there, but they're there to support us. And the other thing that I wanted to say is when you're in a shamanic journey, when you're uncovering a place that you haven't been before, like, it's treacherous, like, it's dark, it's scary, it's dusty, and you're able to, the way that you can generate trust is that this deity is able to give you the map. So how the trust muscle grew for me was like being in this realm where I didn't know what the heck was going on, and they're by your side going, hey, come this way, come this way, come this way, because otherwise you just have no idea where you're going. You're lost in a completely foreign land. So in a way, you just had to trust that you're able to reveal the path forward by them showing you the way, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to navigate that realm. In terms of being able to connect with deities in your life, if there's any deity that you feel the slightest affinity for, go for it. Learn about the folklore, learn about the traits that they embody, find out as much as you can. And yeah, if you're curious about shamanic journeying, I would say absolutely go there. Start with guided shamanic journeys. They're super simple, and if you can find a resonance with someone who's offering a journey that you like, even just the sound of their voice, practice. And even if you don't have the means to have someone support you through it, trust every impulse that you get, any vision, any smell, any sound, follow it and just let it unfold. But yeah, obviously if you can find a mentor or a guide or anyone that has any familiarity with shamanic journeying, just share the journeys with them and let them give you a little bit of feedback. But be really curious, be really open to the unknown, the scary. And I think if you encounter something that's scary, for me, it's like, if I'm in doubt, like, is that snake good or bad? It's probably bad.
It's probably bad. That's right.
Get rid of
it.
But also you can, if you need to, if it's too overwhelming, you can kind of come back up and journal and work with it, and then go back down and deal with it again. So you can let things process and unfold. So with the bigger wounds in life, it's not like you do one shamanic journey or one healing session and it's done.
No.
It's layers of it. So you keep returning back to it. So if you find something scary, you've got the support of these deities that you can call on, and you can come back.
Okay. So apart from this modality, have you met other people who are working in a similar way, who that you do in other modalities, or other people in general?
No, I think the one thing we have in common is tracking. That's similar.
Right.
But essentially how people are working to release that or connect.
What do you mean by tracking?
Tracking. So tracking people's energy fields. Tracking the spirit realm and what's happening. So like, I might interpret that there's an elephant. You might interpret that there's a big load of 50-pound, not 50-pound, but concrete bags. And it's like, it's the same thing. It's but it's completely different.
So like, is it tracking an animal, or like tracking energy and where it's moving and where it's coming from, where it's going?
Both. Because sometimes we're working with purely metaphor and analogy, and then sometimes we're working with the body field. So maybe explain more like what it's like to work with the
body field from a distance? Like, are you like moving your hands around?
Yeah. I'm like jumping across the room these days. And like vocalizing, screaming, shaking, movement mainly. They work very much kinesthetically through me. So using my hands, pulling things out of my body when I'm working on their field or
All right, let's backtrack a little bit because, again, you kind of internalize this, but your average person on the street is like, what? Like pulling things. There's nothing you're pulling something here and I don't know what it is, but it's like most people are like, okay, there's nothing to pull. What are you talking about, Vanessa?
Yeah. Okay. So I might suspect, for example, that there are like gritty rocks within someone's solar plexus or stomach or so then it's like you've got to get them out.
Yeah.
So what am I going to do? I'm going to use my hand and scoop and sieve them out.
So how do you like I've been doing this sort of thing myself and understanding how to do it. How would you explain that you do that remotely from someone's energy field? How would you explain that?
So I don't normally explain it.
Yeah.
You just let it unfurl for them. So they're having their own experience.
No, I mean, how would you explain it to just in general?
So once you're into someone's let you into their field, that then becomes my experience.
Right,
so however much space that I'm like working with, so from the place that I'm doing the healing from, that kind of transforms into their field. Yeah. And then anything that I do, any movement that I do, I'm working on their energy field. Yeah, yeah.
So you're in this kind of like quite intimate contact with them, and so you're working on this layer of energy that can be moved and manipulated. Yes. So largely through the hands. So how would you, so your average person is like, right, okay, I can do that too. Woohoo! You know, it's like the little 3-year-old kid conducting the orchestra, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say largely through the hands. It's through my whole body. So I'll be moving quite a lot.
Okay, yeah.
But the hands are a great resource. But even as I've opened myself up more and more and I trust myself, I use my feet a lot.
Okay.
I use my mouth a lot.
Yeah. So how would you describe to your average person what you're actually dealing with in terms of people's energy fields and the issues and how they manifest?
Yeah. So a lot of people blocking their own power. I get people that come to me that, like you said, they're healers. They're very sensitive. Yeah. They're super intuitive and they just like... they're blocked in some way in their life. Yeah. Yeah. So I deal with a lot of that. And then I think due to my training, we did a lot of work with the ancestral roots. Okay, yeah. So intrinsically, I tend to work with people's ancestral roots because there's a lot of pain wound, but there's also a lot of light there. And I think there's something about connecting people with their ancestral power that helps them understand the spirit world intrinsically, because going back far enough, we were all able to be these healers.
Do you really think so? Do you think, I don't know if I believe that. I think that back in the day there was the shaman, but I don't think your average person was necessarily able to access or didn't want to.
Yes.
I think that there were some people who were just naturally more inclined, like in our age. There are some people who were just like, no, that's too freaky for me. I don't want to do that. I'm just happy, eating grass and whatever.
Yeah, I think, well, maybe then if I reframe it, it's like going back far enough, there is a part of you that is in touch with this intuitive sense, and even if that was maybe picking the right herb from or tracking an animal,
like the core sort of animalistic instinctual spiritual existence. I see that too. I see that everyone is psychic and everyone knows like 100 times more than they think they do. And everyone's so much more connected. Even if they think they're disconnected, they're so much more plugged in than they think they are. And it's like that Marianne Williamson quote, like that people are afraid of their own power. And what I see is that people are afraid because if they do grow and they do performing miracles, like you can get attacked. Like that's what I'm seeing. And it can be really bad. So I never used to understand that Marianne Williamson quote. I never used to understand. And then I would see, like when I am up leveling, when I am pushing through, I'm getting attacked. And it's like, normally if I didn't have that understanding, it was an attack. I'm like, it would catalyze self-doubt. It would be like, how am I creating this? Like, what is what are these thoughts and feelings when the thoughts and feelings are being introduced from externally, right? So it's like, this paradigm that we're living in, it's the atomized, isolated paradigm that's been ripped from the indigenous context of the dreaming, I would say that. And we're all, everywhere in the world, I'd say, is being ripped and more abstracted into the digital, into the abstract. But on the other hand, it's a little bit like being in London yesterday. People were so nice. It's like the propaganda is that London is, and sometimes you can be in London and it's going to hell in a handbasket. But people were never this nice 20 years ago in London. They are so nice now. Not all the time, but a lot of the time, So it's like, on the one hand, things are going downhill in many respects and people going into the screens. But on the other hand, people in London are talking to strangers. I couldn't believe it. Like, I just was having natural conversation 20 years ago. It'll never happen.
Not possible.
Yeah. It's like evolution is happening. And so I think there is this, some people are just going to go into the screen and the digital, but a lot of people are they're going to, especially with the emergence of the plant medicines, people are like, oh, there is a spirit world, and that's why I was sort of bringing you back, because this is the block that we're experiencing culturally, right? Where a lot of people, say in the DMT world, it's huge politic, like, oh, the DMT elves real, that's where people are at. That's the consciousness, because as soon as you open that, if you say, okay, the other is real, there is something other, then it opens Pandora's box. And the tyranny doesn't want us to open that box, because then it's like, wait on, if that's real, then the gods are real too, and the goddesses are real. So there's like this, they don't want human beings becoming empowered and understanding. They want human beings to be scamping around, isolated from one another and not having a conception that they exist at all, So anything related to spirituality. So how have you have you sometimes felt vulnerable or attacked, or somehow holding or practicing a way where you felt like somehow that it was a kind of contraband activity in the world,
I mean, you have to think in a way, even with the place that you live, like if you're jumping up and down in the place that you live and screaming and shouting and doing sessions, like at some point your neighbors are going to ask what the heck's going on. And I know with you, like talking on the street, right? Like it's like, how do you integrate this new level of like normal into your life? But mainly I've felt that I've been given these tools that like, it's like, how hasn't everyone got this? Like for me, it feels like a really direct route to liberation. And it's a very painful route, but it's been...
Why is it so painful, would you say?
I think because sometimes when you're going into the energy field and the psyche and the pain wounds, that what happens is it keeps leading you deeper and deeper and deeper. So,
and you see more.
Yes.
And you see more, and it's not easy to see.
No, and it can take some time. You know, sometimes it might only be 1 or 2 days, but sometimes you need to be in that state for sometimes months at a time, and it can be really taxing. And you're tempted to poke your head up and come back up, but you know that there's a bit more digging to do. And at the end of the day, you have choice, and you're only given what you can handle. But there are times when you kind of need to enter the darkness and do the work, and then you're also able to meet the people that you work with from knowing that you've been there yourself. Yeah.
So where to now with the work you're doing? How would you describe what you want to do, and how you feel in relationship to the rest of the world practicing this modality and the work you do? Where do you want to take it now, do you think?
Yeah, I grew up being a dancer, and I find that now I'm dropping into trance states when I dance.
Okay.
So I'm super curious about where that can go and where I can take that, because that's
not that easy to do. Like that's like back in my day, you know, like that's what it was all about in the framework of the Goa scene, that people were trying to go to those trance states. It's almost non-existent these days. Within the music just doesn't suit you, just as opposed to it, right? But back in the day, and even in some cultures like Finland, you'll have people who that's their aim, to take psychedelics, or without psychedelics to go into trance states, you know. So it's interesting you talk about that as being so powerful. What's the powerful part in that for you?
It's gentle. Shamanic journeying can be tough on the body and painful, whereas when I'm dancing, there's something about it being so free flowing, about the movement, one movement leading the next movement, moving, and just following that, where there's no mind, that I'm able to shed very quickly. And there's a ease and a grace that is sometimes harder with shamanic journeying. So I find that I'm able to release a lot.
Okay. In an individual level, like a healing level.
Yeah.
Because that's like the trance is like the ultimate let go, right? And even with psychedelics, you don't necessarily, a lot of the healing that happens is when you're letting go of the mind, letting go of the ego, and then just the healing, the alignment will begin to happen automatically.
Absolutely.
Beyond the mind. Like that, a lot of people are stuck. And a lot of people who want to take psychedelics, that's what they say their mind problem is. They can't let go. So people know on some level it's really important to let go, because that's when everything can happen. That's when you can, but also there's a huge fear of let go in the culture. There's a huge fear that people are going to let go, and they're going to suddenly, you know, there's going to be people around them like dead or something, you know, or it's like something bad is going to come out of them, you know. And a lot of times there is this repressed force. That's like the Freudian worldview, that there is a repressed force, an evil in humans that is this amazing documentary called The Century of the Self. Have you heard about this?
No, I haven't.
It's a classic documentary, and the whole document, it's like a 4-hour documentary, and the whole premise of the documentary is Western culture is built upon two forms of there were two major influences in the 20th century, Wilhelm Reich and Freud. And Wilhelm Reich was presumably a contemporary, but he acted as a student when he was way beyond Freud. So Freud's idea was that there was a force in human beings that needed to be suppressed or controlled, because it would come out and it would destroy society. It wasn't allowed in society. Whereas Reich his idea was, no, we're going to liberate the human energy field. He discovered the human energy field in the West, called it organ energy. And he was doing body work with people and able to bring people to orgasmic states in like 5 minutes. And, people shaking and going crazy. And so this was like way, way, way ahead of his time. But this documentary goes into it and explains like these forces, and ended up Freud's nephew is Edward Bernays, the father of propaganda, aka brainwashing, in the 1920s.
Wow.
And the whole idea is subjugate the masses.
Yeah.
And so this is what we're all subject to, brainwashing. And that he's the father of it. It started with him over 100 years ago. And then it's just sort of spread out from here. And the whole idea of this propaganda and brainwashing, we're all subject to. It comes down to like a core fear of the spiritual self. It's like, no, like don't let go, don't be yourself. That's not allowed. You're supposed to be controlled, constrained, and a good boy, good member of society, and that's allowed. But it's also a way to the elites and the tyranny to control people as well. So it is this. I think there is this kind of like core fear, and it's like what you were saying. It's not that easy to go into trance states. It's like, people who are the like the sand bushmen, their whole tradition is about, they do take some plants, but their whole tradition is dancing and going into trance states. That's all what it is. Yeah. But they're able to do that because when Lawrence Vanderpost was talking to them, they couldn't believe that he couldn't hear the stars. They thought something was really wrong with him, that he couldn't hear the stars.
Wow. I love that.
So they were just like, Indigenous people just so much more connected. And it's just like, it sort of comes back to that. It's like, okay, how do we become more connected? And I think in that trance space, I don't have that. I probably have the deeper experience of trance taking psychedelics rather than in my natural state. It's like kind of hit and miss. But in that space, okay, well, that's where the innate healing can happen. So what would you say? How would you explain the trance and what happens for you? Because you're already having these visionary states and having this consciousness. How would you explain that to people when you're dancing and going into that?
It's like I find I have to often start close to the floor. So whether it's laying on the floor or crawling on the floor, or sometimes the connection's even just done through my feet. But then at some point, and just really taking time to drop in. So I'm never looking for a trance state. I'm looking to connect with my body. Yeah. Because the minute you chase it, it's gone. Yeah. Just starting really, really slow to connect with my body and letting it express itself. And yet again, exactly how I do the healing, just letting one movement lead the next movement, lead the next movement, lead the next movement, and not judging or questioning any of it and not having any expectation and just following it. And then it's like something drops and I drop in and then it moves me. Yeah. And I'm no longer the one in control.
Yeah. Well, this is what people talk about who are performers, like the singers or whatever. Suddenly they're not, the spirit is moving them. They're no longer, the mind is no longer in control. They've just something else is doing all of it. I had a friend who used to be like, could have been a big, huge rock star like Prince, but he never made it. Like he really could have easily been on that level. And people would say to him after a gig, like, man, that was so amazing. It changed my life. He was like, what are you talking about? Like, and you get this with healers as well. Yeah. Like after a session, they would say, "No, that's not me," and you're like, "Yeah, but it was too," because it really is you, but it's just not the regular mind or the ego doing that. But and then when you go into these trance states, how can you describe what it's like and what happens for you in those states?
It's like that. You just kind of forget, and then when you're out, you might feel really relaxed. You could feel very light and relieved. You can feel like shit. you know, because you've just run a marathon in a way. Most of the time you feel pretty good.
So how long are you dancing in a trance state, would you say?
So most of my experience has been through 5 rhythms. I found that very effective.
What about the beady weedy guys coming up and boogieing up next to you?
Well, yeah. So I would say it's easier for me to get into trance spaces when I'm dancing on my own.
Right.
So I'm on the edge of the dance floor.
Yeah,
normally.
right. Facing the wall.
Yeah, pretty much. And then states of ecstasy can be accessed more easy in the group. So when there's, 100 dancers and we're all jumping up and down.
Right.
Yeah. But that's not so much. It's weird. I wouldn't say it's not trance, but you're more conscious of it.
Right.
And I think...
Well, this is another thing. Like, I had an experience of, like, because I was going to forest parties around the Byron Bay area, which was probably the most vibrant forest party scene in the world, like, along with Brazil and maybe Finland. There were the places where, okay, this was a real culture. And there were times there where where the whole dance floor would synchronize into a collective framework of unified beingness, and that was actually, but then it stopped in 2004, it stopped. And I talked to other people, they're like, yeah, it just stopped happening. Why is that? I still don't know. But it's like, yeah, that's another level of it where you're actually, I guess, going into a trance with other people. And perhaps this is something related to a higher evolution in humanity where we're able to trust other people enough that we can just let go with other people. Right? Like, letting go by yourself is one thing, but trust other people enough that you can let go with them, and then, like, the synchronization and coordination just happens.
Absolutely.
It's like, the word murmuration?
No.
The birds, they're flying together?
Yeah.
That's the evolutionary future. It's like, they don't even know. They're not thinking about it. They're just doing it. They're just going, like, that's just how they are, right? I think humans can be like that too. That's the human potential.
Absolutely.
I truly see that's the human potential there. So you talked about the trance states, but what about the Seiðr work in general? Where do you feel like you're taking that?
Yeah, I'm pretty keen to teach people the tools so that we can create communities where we're practicing together, because some of us are practitioners and you're going to practice on your own, but when you practice together, exactly like you were talking about, someone's having this massive release, then you're triggered, you're having this massive release. It's great. You're just vibing off each other.
Right.
The same thing that I talked about before with the ecstasy. Someone's in a certain conscious state or level, and then the whole group's doing it.
Right.
And the other thing that it's so simple, but the medicine, so we practice Seiðr with the staff.
Yeah, okay.
And, we've got all these tools in our kitchen, but I just don't know how people don't have staffs.
Okay, you bring back the staff.
They are epic.
That's how you do the magic here in the video games. You go with the staff and the magic comes out and you kill the ogres and shit. You know?
And it's just a tool. Of course, it's always going to come back to you. But when you are working with sometimes these energies that are hard to anchor, especially the energies of the light, so when you're going into the trance states, using the staff to anchor it down into your actual physical body so that you can then take that into the world and take that into your practice.
Yes.
So powerful, and so archetypal.
So now you're heading to the perineum of the world, Melbourne, and you want to do this with people.
Yes.
Yeah, you want to get people working together. So how's that going to work? People going to rock up every week and do 3 hours, and or are they going to sign up for an 8-week course? How do you think you're going to do that?
Yeah, so I'm going to offer meeting every fortnight over 3 months, to help integrate it as well, and so people can have.
Like an integration session too.
Yeah.
Right. You need to do online meetings as well, online forums and stuff.
For now, I'm really keen to get this practicing in face to face.
Yeah.
Yeah, because online's always an option and it'll always be there, but to get momentum face to face is feeling exciting for
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
And to get groups of people together.
So how often are you thinking people going to meet and practice together? And
Every
do
2
this?
weeks.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Not once a week? It's not like...
I just really want people to be able to have their own journeys in between,
Right.
and then to come back
Yeah, sure.
and use it as fuel. So
Right. And
container.
what about your healing work with people? So you do the remote healing work with people, so people can hit you up, and anywhere in the world they can do that.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
so, and then are you teaching what you're doing? How do you? So when you're doing when you're going to be doing work with people, so you're basically teaching them like the basis of Seiðr.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
right,
The
right.
skills, and
Okay.
then we kind of break off and can work with each other, and then can come
Okay.
together and work as
All
well.
right. So this is the first time you're going to be teaching?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I found teaching, because I'm teaching torping at the moment, it's amazing because you actually learn more about what you're doing when you're teaching it, and then you start to understand the real problems in the world. Also, it's just a lot of people, you feel like a secondary school teacher. It's like, Johnny is not paying attention and he doesn't come to meetings when he says that he will. And I'd like him to be more diligent and focused, all this. That's so funny. All right. And what else? So you're obviously very passionate about this work, and that you talked about trance dance. What else is you finding really inspiring in the world right now?
I think just opening up my channel and finding ways to express my creativity. I think that's it. I'm finding the work through altered states, trance states, fascinating, and just the natural shedding that occurs. I think that's really got me moving at the moment, and just seeing about the ways that we can drop in.
All right, great. Thanks, Vanessa. Well, I hope people find this enlightening and can learn something. That's the whole point of this podcast. So I'm sure you'll get a few people hit you up, and I'll be shaking and dancing at the perineum of the world.
Thanks, Jules.